All right. We got Coach Bob Glasgow and Coach Reggie Burress. They both held a lot of different titles, but um, Missouri national teams director. That's the one they've held over various years. Bob Glasgow back before, and Reggie right now. So we're just going to kind of, everyone keeps talking about what's going to happen with Fargo, blah blah blah. But let's put a pause on that. Let's go back in time and listen to a little bit of a history of what was junior nationals, what it was called before it was Fargo.
Yeah, so, junior nationals and and then cadet nationals was tied into it. Back when I was in high school, now we're really dating it. You know, the early '70s, it was at Iowa City, and they had the junior national tournament, and then they ran it, and it was the United States Wrestling Federation, USFW, and then about 10, 11 years after it got through Iowa City, it went to Cedar Falls. And so my first year of being involved was 1983, that summer. And we took 25 kids. We used our state tournament to qualify. And that's how they got to go to the top four or whatever we were allowed at that time. I think actually it was only the top three at that time. Went to Cedar Falls, and we practiced in the Unidome and had the national tournament there at that time. And it was still big. I mean, there was one bracket of a good points tournament, and back then it was black points before they changed it to good points. And you'd have 143, 153 kids in a bracket, and those guys standing on that podium, when they dropped their bracket, it would drop all the way to the floor. Well, now they have two pools, you know, so it's a little different. And it's just because the numbers are so big. And the tournament got so big, they had to go to two pools and spread it out a little bit and go to the good point system, which was a better move for everybody anyway.
So when you were taking kids in '83, first of all, was Missouri USA Wrestling was there a team before like '82 or '83?
Yeah. There was kids that went when I was in high school. Went to Cedar Falls. We had a few All-Americans, not the numbers that we have today. Mark Simpson from Blue Springs had placed. I got fifth one year. The kid from Reggie, help me. The kid from Webb City wrestled at Wisconsin, ended up placing, was an All-American.
I can't think of his name at the moment. Yes.
Yeah. And Wes Roper was an All-American up there in Greco. So we had a handful of guys. Kurt Monning, another Blue Springs grad, was a national runner up there one year. Couldn't win a state title, similar to me, but we could place at the state or the national tournament. We weren't good enough to place in the state tournament or win the state tournament. How stupid is that? But anyway, yeah. So yes, we had it. Missouri Wrestling Federation at that time was sending kids to Iowa City to go up there, and Chuck Sears, Don Gianola, Wayne McGinnis, those guys were all taking teams up there in the summertime and going. I can remember when Chuck Sears got called to the head table one time, and we had some wrestlers, when they had gotten beaten out, started swimming in the reservoir by the dam, which was really stupid and dangerous. And two of them were Blue Springs kids. Wasn't me, but so yeah, it's always been that way. You know, once it's hard to supervise. And you got those kids who get knocked out, and you're still wrestling or coaching in the tournament. Lots of things are happening.
Right. Some things never change, do they, Reggie?
No.
So when you were taking people in '83, you told me about this, so I kind of just wanted you to tell the other people. But what was the experience like for the wrestlers as far as going to Fargo at that time?
Well, and compared to what they have today, we would go to the state tournament and qualify, and then you make literally hundreds of phone calls because you didn't have email, you didn't have fax, you didn't have any of those things. So I'm on hardline, confirming kids are going to go, because we didn't have a bus. Each kid and each coach drove themselves to the tournament. Then we met at a specific time and date outside the registration office as a team, because they'd only register as a team. You couldn't go in individually. And we would get all our 23 kids or 25 kids and line them up and start to go through. And you'd be shocked at how many kids didn't have cards or didn't have this or forgot that. And so now you're scrambling or the federation at that time would make you just rebuy them all cards. So Russ Devaney, who was our treasurer at the time, would send me with a couple of blank checks and said, all right, here's, in case something happens, you got this, this, and this. And so we, for $225, each individual paid, and that was room and board and a reversible singlet and a T-shirt. That was it. And they were responsible for getting themselves up there. And I think I told you, James, that it, back then the room and meals were $12 a day. And it was good food, and the dorms were nice. There wasn't any air conditioning, and Reggie remembers that. He was one of those athletes at that time. But for $12 a day, you were eating and sleeping.
Reggie, what do you remember from wrestling up there? I never talked to you about that before.
I don't know if wrestling up there, but I can remember me and like 4 other guys rode up there with Doug Long, who was the head coach at Chillicothe High School, and he was real involved at the time. And we're on our way up there and head to Cedar Falls, and we're driving up there, and we had a flat tire like in southern Iowa. And if you know Coach Long, he was getting pretty aggravated by the flat tire. We drive a little farther, and we start heading into Cedar Rapids, and he goes, "Hey guys, start looking for the college." I'm like, I look at Dan Duncan, and I'm like, we're not at the right place. They're like, well, tell him. I go, Coach Long, I think we're in the wrong place. We're heading to Cedar Falls. He's like, well, gosh dang it, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why'd you wait this long? I'm like, I'm not driving this thing. But it was just a Winnebago type thing that he drove up there. And I mean, you're just hoping to get up there and back without having any incidents. It's changed a lot for the better, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Just the liability situations. I mean, sending kids up there, some of them would actually drive themselves and didn't have a parent go with them or whatever. It was a whole different world. And, and then you'd have all those other states there. And California was always a rowdy group. They always were causing issues with discipline in the dorms. And there were times where, it might have been when you were there, Reg. Did Korea get to bring a team in when you were there?
There were some foreign athletes there, yes.
Yeah. They would get Guam sometimes. The Federation would have coinciding agreements and would let some other people come in. And our dorm one year, we were on the same floor as the Korean national team. That was an experience, because they would have that. They bring their own kimchi and stuff. And they would be cooking it in the rooms. God, it was bad, but it was a good time. I mean, it was a great experience for a lot of people. It's just financially, the difference between now and today, going from dorm rooms with no air conditioning to from that point when Cedar Falls finally lost it and said, you know what, we don't want it anymore. It took it and went to Minnesota for 2 years. And then by then though, we had a bus. I don't ever remember taking a team on a bus to Cedar Falls. I think it was always cars and your own transportation. I'm positive of it. Once we started going to Minneapolis, though, was that 2 years, Reggie? Do you remember?
I think you were only there 1 year, but I could
1 year. Yeah, so we went there, and it was a bus, and I can remember we got done with the tournament. Our kids who did medal got their medals, and it was time to leave, and 2 guys weren't there. They weren't at the bus when it was time to schedule outside the arena. And we waited 30 minutes, and I finally said, hell with them. I'm out. Wes Roper's still here. Mike Haggerty's still here. I talked to both of them. I said, if these 2 kids show up, I've called their parents. I don't know where they are. The parents can, because we didn't have cell phones like that. And I said, if you find these guys, will you guys take them home? Yeah, we'll bring them home. And ended up riding back with Wes Roper. But
so it was found them, actually.
Well, yeah, they finally came strolling in, but we left them there.
And they were kind of high profile kids too, right?
Yes, they were. Yes, they were.
Are we protecting the names of
the innocent?
Yeah, of the non-innocent here. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it was that was one of those. Well, and that one of those kids we had trouble with the whole tournament. He was on a run. We sent him out on a team run, and he's one of the last kids back. So we made him do push-ups because he was a lightweight. There was no reason he should have been. Him and his buddy should have been that late. Well, he starts doing push-ups, and I hear this clank on the concrete there in front of the dorm. I'm like, what was that? He's got a pellet gun. So then we get a call that they were shooting his pellet gun on the run. It's just like, what are we doing, you know? So I should have sent him home from right then. But he was a high-profile kid.
I think that Graham would be okay with it because it's so discussed. But do you, Reggie, want to share what led him to be sent home?
Well, the Grahams and another one of their friends had went to Walmart. And when you're in Brookings, South Dakota, and you're not thinking, you almost always have to go to Walmart and get a fan. Because I've never been to a hotter place on earth than the dorms in Brookings, South Dakota. That's for sure. So they go and they get an airsoft gun. And on their way back, they're in a park, and there's like a porta potty there, and some guys working on it, and they decided to go ahead and shoot him with their airsoft gun. And I mean, you know, to their credit, they probably shot each other 100 times with their airsoft gun, but you can't do it to public workers there in Brookings, South Dakota. So they get back to the dorms, and I'm already in Fargo, and Bob gets the call, and he calls us, and we're trying to figure it out. And so they go in and talk to, and the Grahams, I know for sure. So they go through their bags, and one of them has a device, a knife, to open up his barley with and stir it with when he's making it in the room, which they always eat. And
his barley?
They always ate barley. That's what they ate for
some Amish stuff right here.
Every meal. And so they got sent home, and I will say they took it well. They didn't really argue, and they understood. And the good thing is, if you look back, I don't know, 6 years later, I'm like, Graham wanted to start coaching. I'm like, well, we'll send you to junior duels first. And some people were like, are you sending him on a trip? I go, you do know people change, right? We all grow up sooner or later. And now he's a great asset to Missouri USA Wrestling and wants to do all the Greco stuff and help out as much as he can. So I just want to let people know that, you know, kids make mistakes, but they grow up and they become good members of society. That's what I would say.
So this is the random, like, aside, but I don't know if you guys have been watching that Michael Jordan documentary. But
yeah.
People are all like up in arms all the time, like, man, he was just so tough on those guys. He was just so tough on. It's like, that's a great example right there. A little tough love for Graham. It turned out fine. You know what I'm saying? Also, we all know as being involved in wrestling that what Michael Jordan was saying to his teammates wasn't all that tough or anything.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
So what about the dual trips back then? I know I've heard some different stories from how kind of they obviously not going back as far as the 80s here, but Jeremy Baker told me a story about having to run a dual trip, and it was kind of like on a small budget and everything too. Do you guys have anything?
Everything was a small budget back then. Yeah.
I know Cadet duels. When I first asked Coach Glasgow if we could take a team to Cadet duels, and he was like, well, are you going to go to the tournament? I'm like, yeah, I'll go. He goes, we'll write you a check for $3,000, and that's all you get. So we were out there in Colorado, and we have extra T-shirts, and we're selling them to try to get gas money to get back to Missouri. I mean, it was completely different than it is now. Sometimes the kids don't realize how spoiled they are now compared to what they were.
For those guys to if they could look back and see what had to happen for them to get where they are today, it's amazing. You know, because we also hosted the Cadet and Junior National Tournament at Columbia one year and at Warrensburg before it all finally ended up at Fargo the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And which was really good for our team because we would bring all those qualifiers in, and they would help run security, run tables, and we would deduct their costs to going to the national tournament. And that was really a great thing for us. Even when we started to go to Fargo, we'd have Cadet Nationals at Columbia, and those kids would work all week, and we could train in between sessions. So we'd have practices in between sessions, and then they would work. So they were tired, and we kept them busy. That was probably the least discipline issues that we had during that whole time. But that worked out really well, and it generated a lot more funds. And that's really when the financial piece opened up for Missouri, as we were able to do stuff. But we still today, what is it, $1,000, $1,200, Reggie, per kid?
$1,050.
Yeah, I can remember that those first years in the early '80s when literally they got that old double knit nylon reversible singlet, and they were plain Jane. There was nothing on them. And like 3 years after we had gone, we finally got them silk screened, and those guys thought that was the big time, man. We actually had Missouri on a singlet, and had on the back right butt cheek was a mule with two footprints kicking. So it was.
That's the one I had.
Yeah, they oh man, we got
windbreaker pullover type thing.
Yep,
too.
yep.
You still have it, Reggie?
I actually had one of the T-shirts about 6 years ago when we were moving. I can't find it, but I had one of the T-shirts. I'm not even sure it was a Missouri shirt. It was just a shirt that I collected while we were there. I got about 30 shirts while I was up there. I don't know how we marked it.
Garage. You got boxes of T-shirts in there, so. Reggie's got a lot of collection of Fargo stuff from over the years, either purposely or not. I'm not sure.
Sometimes not.
Yeah, we're going to have to do a museum at Reggie. You're going to have to do a Missouri Wrestling Museum.
It's I mean, this will be, if we don't go this year, I think Coach Glasgow put me on staff in 1997 was the first year I got to go to Fargo. I'll tell you a couple good stories about that. But if we don't have it this year, I think it'll break that streak of 23 years going to Fargo. So
it didn't seem that long, but that's right.
So the first year I went to Fargo, we get up there, and I don't really know anybody besides Coach Glasgow, basically, and Coach Dorman, and I knew some other people, but not a lot. And so the last day we were there, we used to leave like at 8 o'clock at night to come home. We didn't leave earlier, and so I ate my morning meal there at the cafeteria, loaded up the bus, came over, and I was still finishing up my college degree, so I didn't have a lot of money, so I went to the ATM. I was going to get $20 out, because you had to get $20 out back then. And so I scanned my card, and it said, "You want to check your balance?" So it cost $1 to check your balance. I checked it, and it put me under $20 at 19, so I didn't have any money. So I spent the rest of the time not eating anything till we got back like at 4 o'clock in the morning the next morning, because I really didn't know anybody or didn't want to ask anybody for any meal money or anything like that. So from 7 o'clock to the next morning about 4 a.m., I just drank some water and hung out. There wasn't anybody to ask or to help out or anything like that.
You didn't make a friend, Reggie? Come on now.
Well, I just didn't want to ask anybody for money.
Oh, no. There's some people that don't worry about that, obviously. So
that first year, James, that in '83 through '85, I think those first 3 summers, it was me by myself coaching those guys on 24 mats, and so it was miserable. And you would be running, and there would be times when you guys have been there, you know how chaotic it is, and they're saying we need a Missouri coach to mat 18, and I'm like, I've already got one here, and I've got one over there on 12, and so they would have to hold our matches a lot of times because there was only one of us. And then Mike Feline got involved with us. He went, and then once Reggie's group got in there, we started getting 4 and 5 coaches that would spend the time, because we did it for nothing. We didn't get paid. There was no stipends. It was you went because you loved the sport and you wanted to be involved, and hopefully some of your kids went with you, which I'm sure I know were Mr. Violations, transporting kids and stuff, but you had to do what you had to do. And it is what it is. So so the way we've grown from that to 1 guy on staff to 2 guys on staff and 3 and 4 and having a training camp now and all those things. And that's back when Reggie was in. For Missouri, it was the training camp that was the best part of the trip. The tournament, for the most part, most of our guys, the vast majority of our guys, were going to go 1 and 2, 0 and 2, 2 and 2, and if you went 3 and 2 and out, you thought you had a hell of a tournament, And every once in a while, you'd sneak a guy coming in to be an All-American, and then you were really high on cotton. And then in 1990 was kind of Missouri's breakthrough year of multiple All-Americans and guys in the finals. And we had a really good team that year, and had a couple national champions in both Greco and freestyle, and had world team members. And that's when I really remember Missouri Federation at that time becoming a name in high school wrestling. So
what were some of the names on that team, like the kids' names?
Oh, Nick Badaki, Ricky Williams, Mark Palmer, Sean Fry, Scott Hamilton, Brian Jackson,
Henson Perlers.
Henson, the Perlers. Yeah, I mean we had a really good group, and they were good.
No.
So
Reggie, what do you think from when you've been doing it as director, what's the best year or group of, as far as the wrestlers you had?
Well, I'd have to say that once Coach Glasgow approved the cadet duels, being able to do cadet duels, it helped us all along the way. So we did cadet duels in Colorado, then Missouri hosted cadet duels. And that was in the mid 2000s or 2005, 6, around in there. And that cadet team won a national title, which is very rare for Missouri, obviously, to win a national title at a dual tournament. There's very few states that have won national titles. So that group was a great team, and had, a lot of the Old Oak Park kids on it, Park Hill kids like Waters, Frieda, those guys were on there. So it was a mixture. we had like the Weiss kid out of St. Louis was on that team. Dante Butler was on some of those teams. So it was a lot of mixture of kids around the state, and those are really good teams. And that
Mangoes.
The Mangoes. So it propelled on to junior duels a couple years later, where Team Missouri won a Greco national title at junior duels, which I can remember after winning it, the Pennsylvania coach said, "I can't believe Missouri won a national title before Pennsylvania." And that said a lot about Missouri at the time and how good the kids and the coaching was. And I can remember on that team, coaching was me, Dan Duncan, and Spencer Mango. He just made his first world team, and so he was down there, and they kept announcing that he was, world team member, and he was coaching with us. So that was pretty cool. Pretty neat situation.
That group showed out at
hosting.
Fargo,
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, James.
I was just saying that group showed out at Fargo too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that us hosting those events, when we hosted Cadet Nationals in Columbia and Warrensburg, and we had a world team event at Warrensburg too one year. Matt and Franker was on that, and along with TJ Hill and those guys. So hosting those events and then hosting the national duels generated so much funds for us. It allowed us to grow and become not only competitive and having more people support us, it just grew us financially. We Missouri USA Wrestling made significant amount of money to start spending money towards our national teams and getting it where, it cost a kid $50-$60 to go to the duels instead of $200 or $300, so that was a big deal. And a lot of people don't realize that the national duels originally started here in Missouri. Chuck Sears started the Central Cup, and that was held at William Jewell College there at the Mabee Center. And we brought in Archie Randall brought a team in Oklahoma. Kansas would always bring a few kids. St. Louis would bring 2 teams. Kansas City would enter 2 teams. Nebraska would send a team. So we had teams, and we had a dual format in freestyle and Greco all through 2 days at the Mabee Center. And then we did that probably 4 or 5 years. And well, hell, even Scott Cutbirth was wrestling back then, and he was on one of those teams. But so we went through that whole process, and then Chuck just got to where this is too much work for one guy. I'm done with it. Archie Randall then took it over, and now it's become the national duels that we know today. Mm-hmm. So Missouri was a big part of starting that and Chuck Sears being a visionary, so to speak, mm-hmm. of having that kind of thing, wanting that to wrestle in the off season.
Here's a little bit of a lightning round, interesting question for you guys, because you threw out a name there, Coach Glasgow. So, in your opinion, from your time traveling to junior nationals, who is the best Missouri wrestler up there? during your time?
Scotty Schatzman, probably. Just right off the quickest answer off of my head.
Mhm.
TJ Hill, he won
TJ
6 titles.
That's what that was. You mentioned the name, and I was wondering where he'd fall with that. But
TJ almost didn't win his 6th title. He refused to wear the Missouri singlet, and so in between rounds, I said, TJ, if you show up to another match without wearing the Missouri uniform, I will pull you out of this tournament. And a couple of my kids are standing there, and he looks at me and he goes, you won't do that to me. And my Tommy Lewis said, he'll do it and he'll enjoy it. And I told TJ, I said, TJ, I'll get more street cred for pulling you, keeping you from winning a 6th title, than if I let you go win it outside in a different singlet. So you either do this or you're out. And Papa, he went and told Papa, oh, anybody singlet. And he was traveling overseas, so he'd wear a Korean singlet, or he'd wear a Swedish singlet, or anything to help bring him different notoriety. And so Papa Kraus was his coach and mentor, so to speak. And he says, Bob, did you really tell TJ you're going to? I said, yeah, Coach Kraus, I will pull him out of this tournament. And he is going to wear our uniform. Never had another problem with him. So, well, we never had another problem with the uniform.
Reggie, you want to – who was during your time? Who's –
I want to have to say that Jaden Cox is the best kid that we've ever taken up there, in my opinion, just from where, just watching him develop and people not really giving him the credit probably he deserved at sometimes. And then obviously we were all at the Olympic trials when he qualified, and that was a great run from the 9 or 10 seed. And so pretty impressive.
Little known fact, he stayed at Whitson's house 2 weeks prior to qualifying for the Olympics, training with Big Dom. So we're going to take some credit for that somehow. Reggie, can you tell that Deontay Butler, was that his name? Can you tell that story, or is that not for public consumption?
I don't know if I can tell that story. Yeah. We were at junior duels in Enid, Oklahoma, which is, boy, it's not the edge of the earth, but you can sure see it from there. Let me tell you, it's the middle of nowhere, and we're wrestling a match, and he gets beat, and he comes over, and I'm trying to calm him down, and then Dante talks about doing some things to that guy that I don't know if I've ever heard a kid talk about doing to a guy. I'm like, Dante, we just got to calm you down. And Dante made the finals, I think, 3 times at Fargo. He was great, but he'd get fired up, and you'd have to calm him down. And it's a little different than the kids I was used to dealing with at Platte County, that's for sure. But he'd get to Fargo, and he could turn it on every time.
Yeah, I have some other stories I was going to ask you guys about, but we won't put them out there on the street just yet, so it's fine. But Jesse, you got any thoughts from over there in your shadows?
No, I think we covered everything pretty much. I wanted to know who they thought were kind of the best, or if there's a story that really sticks out from like those junior duels trips or something like that, because we've been on a few now, and it's a little different than Fargo, but I think they kind of have covered those.
I think probably the biggest thing with junior duels and coming so far is I can remember the coaches who volunteered to go down there would have to pay their own gas if they're driving down, their own meals, and it's come a long way since then.
Right.
And the kids junior duels is harder to get kids to go to now. It used to be a lot easier, but now a lot of the seniors that used to go are in college and they're training and taking classes. So it does hurt the overall performance at junior duels because of kids going and taking classes at college and not being able to go to junior duels now.
Right.
Go ahead, Jess. No, the junior duels is much, in my opinion, and Reggie, correct me if you think it's different, is much tougher than Fargo. Because every kid you wrestle every round is a multiple state champion. Where Fargo, your first early rounds, if you're got a good draw, you may not see anybody really tough until the 4th round. Mm-hmm. You don't, you get that breather at Fargo, where junior duels, a lot of those teams think Missouri's the breather, you know. So
right.
I can remember coming back from junior duels one year, and it was the Fishers and Justin Cole and maybe Eli Taylor. There's like 5 kids in the van, and we're driving back, and we get to the Kansas-Missouri line, and we cross the Missouri River, and Bobby Fisher goes, "Thank God we're all studs again." So that ought to tell you how hard that tournament is down there, and it's a bit of humble pie down there for a lot of good kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's part of the reason why there's a lot of reasons why the last few years we've been, doing it, trying to get kids to go. And obviously we got some kids to go, but aside from kids going to college early or whatever, they want to take a break before Fargo or whatever. But the reality is some of them just know that's going to be it's also the other bad thing is tough thing is at Fargo, if you have a bad run, well, you will be out. Junior duels, if you have a bad run, you're going to keep having a bad run for the rest of the week, probably.
Yeah.
So,
you're going to have 10 runs that are not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it is tough. It's a tough tournament for sure. But I respect the kids that go now because a lot of them, people are telling them kind of not to go sometimes now because I think it's too tough on them before Fargo. So the ones that go, I got respect for those kids. So
I'm pretty sure Justin Forrest wrestled between 65 and 70 matches at junior duels.
I would believe that.
It's crazy. I mean, a lot of matches at duels.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Well, I'll let you guys go for the day. Sorry we got to you guys late a little bit.
Sorry,
I'm gonna blame Jesse on that. He needed to get the Arizona out of him a little bit, and he's back in Missouri right now. So anyway,
Glasgow getting ready to go play golf or not?
No, I don't play a lot on the weekends. It's just too crowded, and
too many people. Yep.
Yeah, I play a lot more during the week in the mornings and get done quicker. And that's when you're retired. That's the gig. So
I think we'll know June 1st whether we're having Fargo or not. That's the
deadline or the proposed deadline.